A march from Beethoven's one and only opera Fidelio, played by the Budapest Symphony Orchestra here on Kansas Public Radio. To help us begin things in our afternoon of classical music, and I'm Jeff Watson, always a pleasure to be with you. Coming up, we're going to listen to some of the music that Franz Liszt had used to teach himself piano, one of the Transcendental Etudes, as well as Respighi's Suite for Small Orchestra, each movement resembling the sound of a different winged creature. We'll hear the birds with the Atlanta Symphony. That's all just ahead here on KPR. After we enjoy the sound of Bach, we'll listen to the first of his orchestral suites, an overture followed by Baroque airs, one that he wrote in 1724. Orchestral Suite No. 1 played by the Boston Baroque, led by Martin Perlman, here on KPR. Orchestral Suite No. 1 in C by Johann Sebastian Bach. We heard the Boston Baroque led by Martin Perlman today on Kansas Public Radio. In about 10 minutes from now, we'll have the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra along for the suite for small orchestra known as The Birds by Ottorino Respighi. Support for classical music on KPR comes from the University of Kansas, transforming students and society through academics, discovery, service, and spirit. Information about the possibilities of a KU education is online at ku.edu. And Kansas City PBS, formerly KCPT, committed to providing a trusted, balanced, and essential public media service to Kansas City since 1961. More information at kansascitypbs.org. Some piano music for you next by Franz Liszt, one of the great piano virtuosos of history. You know he was good because he wrote his own piano lessons. As a 15-year-old student in 1826, he wrote down a series of complex etudes expressly for the purpose of helping him practice. He kept a hold of these, and as time went on, he would add to them and elaborate on them, and they came to be known as his Transcendental Etudes, the 11th of which we'll hear next, played by pianist Yevgeny Kissin on Kansas Public Radio. Transcendental Etude No. 11 by Franz Liszt, from a set of etudes he wrote as a 15-year-old student, played today by pianist Yevgeny Kissin, here on Kansas Public Radio. In about 20 minutes from now, the news from NPR, headed your way from the University of Kansas. This is Kansas Public Radio, 91.5 Lawrence, 89.7 Emporia, and online at kansaspublicradio.org. I know that boat purchase felt like a good idea at the time, but if it's starting to feel like an anchor around your wallet, KPR's vehicle donation program is here for you. We'll take your donated vehicle and use it to fund the programs you enjoy every day. Donate your boat, car, or motorcycle at kansaspublicradio.org. Not long ago, on an afternoon about 2 weeks back, I remember playing for you a Hungarian flute rondo, and shortly after that I got a nice message from a listener who said she was enjoying the music out on her porch, when, suddenly out of nowhere, this bird, a male cardinal, flitted down near the radio. It seemed to be confused, mistaking the flute sound for another bird, which he thought was quite amusing. I thought it was a nice story, and it also put me in mind of a particular orchestral suite that Ottorino Respighi wrote in 1928, where in each movement the orchestra attempts to replicate a different kind of bird song. It's The Birds next on KPR. We're with the Atlanta Symphony led by Yoel Levy here on Kansas Public Radio. A little something for our feathered friends. Ottorino Respighi's Suite for Small Orchestra, The Birds, from 1928 with the Atlanta Symphony led by Yoel Levy, today on Kansas Public Radio, where we're about ready for NPR News. And ahead in the next hour, a dance on Russian airs, followed by a Russian orchestral suite, the second of Tchaikovsky. All ahead on Kansas Public Radio.
We spend a lot of time in our newsroom thinking about the past and how context can help us all understand
It almost sounds like it could have been something written by John Williams, but it's actually from Another great American composer of our time, Peter Boyer, a luminary of the current classical world, and something he wrote in 1997, the Celebration Overture, with Boyer himself leading the London Philharmonic in that recording, here on Kansas Public Radio. As we begin our 2 o'clock hour of classical music, and I'm Jeff Watson, it's celebration enough just to have you along for the classics, and I'm with you until 3. We'll be taking a look at a pair of works that represent the first great musical achievements of two composers, Bedřich Smetana and Zoltán Kodály. From the latter, we'll listen to an idyll he wrote as a student, and later improved into a suite for orchestra known as Summer Evening. That'll be along in a rough half hour. Support for classical music on KPR comes from the University of Kansas, educating generations of Jayhawks to become pioneers, innovators, voyagers, and champions. Information about the possibilities of a KU education is online at ku.edu. As mentioned from the Czech composer Bedřich Smetana, we have some chamber music that he wrote in 1854. And though it's considered his first great achievement as a composer, it was born out of the tragic grief of losing his second child in 1854. It's his piano trio in G minor, and we'll hear it with the Weiss-Kaplan-Newman Trio next on Kansas Public Radio. Written in 1854, the piano trio in G minor by Bedřich Smetana, played by the Weiss-Kaplan-Newman Trio, today on Kansas Public Radio, where it's just a few short minutes now until all things considered at 3 o'clock. From the University of Kansas, Kansas Public Radio is 91.5 Lawrence, 99.5 Manhattan, and online at kansaspublicradio.org. It's Thursday, and that means Classics Live this evening at 7. Kansas City's Spire Chamber Ensemble gave a great performance of the groundbreaking masterpiece by Johannes Brahms, his German Requiem. The acoustics of Grace Cathedral in Topeka from this GreatSpaces.org concert helped to make the music especially moving. Join us for the Brahms German Requiem on Classics Live. That's tonight at 7, here on Kansas Public Radio. One of the great early musical achievements of Hungarian composer Zoltán Kodály was a student work that he had written in 1906, an idyll for chamber orchestra, which he wrote was conceived on summer evenings amid harvested cornfields by the ripples of the Adriatic. It's an expressive, atmospheric work that he improved at the urging of Arturo Toscanini, who premiered the work in 1929. It's known as Summer Evening, and we'll hear it next with the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra, here on Kansas Public Radio. The evocative idyll for chamber orchestra, first written in 1906 by Zoltán Kodály, Summer Evening, this afternoon with the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra on Kansas Public Radio, where it's just about 3 o'clock and about time for me to bid you good afternoon as always. I'm Jeff Watson, and it's always a pleasure to share the classics throughout the afternoon with you. We'll visit again at noon tomorrow. Classics Live awaits us at 7 tonight, and music with Marcia Higginson from 8 to 9. That's all ahead today on Kansas Public Radio.
Being a public radio listener means being a member of the public radio team. It's the hosts you trust, the reporters you rely on, the producers behind the scenes, and you. NPR is powered by this station, and this station counts on you. You've invested in this essential public service for 50 years now, and we couldn't do it without you. Thank you for being part of NPR.
From the University of Kansas, this is your place for NPR News, Kansas Public Radio. KANU and KANU HD1 Lawrence, FM 91.5. KANH and KANH HD1 Emporia, FM 89.7. KANV and KANV HD1 Oldsburg Junction City, FM 91.3. KANQ Chanute, FM 90.3. Online at kansaspublicradio.org, or tell your smart speakers to play Kansas Public Radio.